Hello, I'm Helen Ferris, and on behalf of the MGAA, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this afternoon, CRM, How to Win New Business in 2021, hosted by Aventus. Just to run through a few housekeeping points, you should all be muted and your cameras should be turned off. This webinar is accredited for CPD points if relevant to your ongoing professional development program. The video will be available on our website after the event, hosted by YouTube. If you'd like to ask a question, please do so by going to the chat button at the bottom of your screen. These will be answered at the end of the session by way of a Q&A. In 2021, the hard market will bring pressure on renewals, and combined with new regulation around pricing and other current market challenges, we're likely to see a renewed emphasis on new business. This webinar explores how MGAs and brokers can better engage with customers in 2021 and beyond, whilst also increasing efficiencies to secure sustainable new business. We're just waiting for one of our panelists to dial in, but our panel today includes Sam White, CEO of Freedom Services Group, Ben Turner, Strategic Account Director for Salesforce, and Peter Goodman, CEO of Aventus. Before we start with the discussion, I'll just ask them to introduce themselves. Sam, over to you.
Thank you. So I'm Sam White, I'm CEO and founder of Freedom Services Group, and now more recently Stella Insurance in Australia. And we're a sort of, I like to say, a holistic group of companies all working in the motor insurance sector. I've got a claims business, Action 365, a UK motor MGA, which is Pukka Insure. And most recently, we've got Freedom Brokers, which is a motor insurance broker operating on the price comparison sites in the UK. Pete?
Yep. Oh yeah, Peter Goodman, the founder and CEO of Aventus Platform. And we really entered this space a couple of years ago to enable digital enablement, really, and how to sort of make companies much more focused on their customers and enabling things like cross-sell. And we've obviously we've built on top of the Salesforce platform our insurance CRM, which obviously combines our platform with the financial services cloud, which I think out of the box gives companies a great opportunity to really see their customers all in one place and open up multiple distribution channels. Ben, you're in now, right? I can see you.
Good afternoon. Sorry, it's technology, eh? Who would have it? Who would have it? So yeah, good afternoon all, and apologies for being a few minutes late. It's the wonders of Zoom. So hope everyone's keeping safe and well. So my name is Ben Turner. I lead from Monday actually our general insurance and London market business here for Salesforce in the UK. Worked in the sector for over 15 years. Started my career at Polaris UK Limited, the general insurance standards body. So delighted to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Okay, so let's kick off with the first question then. What is it about the current environment that makes customer management and cross-selling more critical than ever before? Who's going to take that first?
I can start if you like.
And then Sam.
You want me to take one for the team, Pete?
Go on, Sam. Go on, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, can I start with everything? I mean, I'm in the motor sector, so we've got our own unique challenges. I'm sure that every sector of insurance is suffering with their own kind of unique issues to overcome, but pricing is extremely keen. Cost of the XOL has gone up over the last few years. I know other MGAs in the motor space are really struggling to try and make everything work and fit together. And then you look in the sort of wider environment, and I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is customer expectation is far higher than we're currently delivering in this sector. So, you know, I always like to compare, you know, my real life experiences with what I'm trying to achieve with my insurance business. And, you know, I want to order a taxi, I get on my mobile phone, Uber knows where I am, I take a couple of clicks, the car's here. It even sends me a request to ask me, how do I want my music in the car or the temperature in the car? And it's just all very easy and convenient, and the expectation is not for me to do the work. And I think we're suffering massively in the insurance sector that we just haven't got up to speed with that. We have a tendency to think in terms of policies instead of in terms of customers. And me and Pete have had this chat on numerous occasions in the past that, we're just not very customer friendly. Most of us are still working in call center environments where people are having to phone through, give their policy information, go through DPA. Often this information isn't linked. So, I don't know enough about my customers when they come through as to their whole experience with me as a business. I'm only looking at that individual policy that they're chatting to us about. And I think there's just an increasing sense that we've always had challenges in terms of how the public see insurance and feel about insurance. There's always this sort of overarching feeling that insurers want to take premiums and not pay out on claims, and they're just difficult to deal with. And I think that that's been heightened over the last couple of years. Certainly hasn't been helped with the recent changes around the business interruption insurance. And I just think there's a lot of work that we all need to do to kind of get that back in balance.
Yeah.
I'll go on, Pete, if you want to go, I'm happy to.
Yeah, all I was going to say is that when you look at the market, when you look at like the way, as when Sam started out talking about the way that customers are treated, it's kind of, for me, I speak to a lot of MGAs, a lot of brokers in what we're doing at the moment, and you find, no one ever says that customers are really cheap to acquire, right? And it always amazes me that then once they've got that customer and they've paid that premium to acquire it through whatever distribution channel they're targeting at that point, they don't do very much more with them. And I think that they don't necessarily leverage the kind of cross-sell and upsell opportunities that they could. And it's understandable when you dig below the surface why they don't, is because often they're on disparate systems. And therefore, if you're sat in different silos in a business, how can, if you're an online business like Amazon or say the fashion brands, whatever they may be, they know exactly what products their customers are looking at the point they're looking at them. They know exactly what their customers bought when they abandoned the cart, when they did. Sometimes an insurance company doesn't even know what policies that individual's got with that business whilst they're talking to them on the phone. And as soon as you remove the barriers to do business with customers, you do more business with your customers. And I feel that that's the next stage, I think, for insurance. And this is not about transformation. This is about enablement. This is not about ripping everything out and starting everything again. It's about really consolidating, doubling down, I think, on focusing on the customers that you have. Because then you might find that the second, third, fourth policy that you have or line of business you have actually isn't the right one for your customer database. You actually might find that you want to launch a fifth insurance line because the data says in your customer base that that's what them customers are now buying. And using technology to drive that it's just ultimately a much more efficient way of doing it.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with everything, Pete, Sam, you've said, especially Sam. I think, we work with over 4,000 customers, insurance customers globally, huge proportion of the market, large, small, MGAs, brokers, loss adjusters, you name it, we probably work with them. And I think the macroeconomic environment is just, we don't like storms in the industry, but there's a perfect storm sort of hitting it, which is, Sam, you talked about it, online digital customer experiences. Yeah, we're all on Amazon, we're all watching Netflix, we're all doing shopping online at the moment, groceries, all these different, customer journeys that we're engaged on. That is the norm, and it's going to be moving forward. So if you aren't meeting those sort of hygiene factors from a customer experience perspective, you're going to be in trouble. And I think the other part of this, that perfect storm, is also the impact of new working ways. So we're all, on this Zoom call. Some of us couldn't get into it, but we're all, interacting in different ways. And the basis of what you have to do as a business is you'll have to be able to sell, service, market, manage claims, whatever it might be, from home, or wherever you decide to work in the world. So that is a massive shift for the industry. And then you just to add a couple of points that Pete, you made there around the cross-selling and, additional products and so forth. The industry has always been, bad at cross-selling and understanding the customer. I think if you go and ask most MGAs or insurers what their sort of average policy per customer would be, they probably don't know. Or if they do, it'll be probably around the 1.1, 1.2 mark. So there's a huge opportunity because most people have, dozens of products to be able to look at that sort of cross-sell, ad-sell perspective. But personalization and data is critical for all of this. And if you don't have your data in one place, from an operational perspective, you just can't do anything of what we've just talked about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think just one point on that. I also think that we get obsessed with digital journeys, right? We get obsessed with digital in a way that it's websites and websites, but this data could be used just as easily in a call center, right? And I think that even if, having that information at your fingertips to make you a better customer agent or broker or, kind of when you're facing that into that customer, you're only going to make them happier, which means they're only more likely to buy that second or third policy. I think it's having just a shiny website, which I think a lot of companies are looking at as a solution for this, doesn't really go deep enough if it's not embedded across the business as a cultural mentality as well. Yeah,
just to add to that, and Sam, please do come in, but we've sort of categorized, Salesforce, big, large IT tech provider. We work with, major brands like Adidas, Unilever, Barclays. What we're seeing is effectively organizations, and insurers are part of this, MGAs are part of this, which are categorized into three banners at the moment. So one are those that are hibernating, so waiting for, this to all blow over and the old world to come back. Well, unfortunately, it's not going to come back. The news, just watching the news, mutant variants coming out. Who knows how long this new world is going to be in flight. So those who are hibernating, in my view, are going to be in trouble. There's the second sort of banner, which is categorization, which is those who are evolving. So have started their digital journeys, Pete, as you mentioned, which, stood up a website, think that is digital. It's not, but we'll need to go faster and quicker. And then the third sort of category is what I'd put, Sam and your organizations into, which is this sort of startup digital native, which have all this customer, data at their disposal to be able to do, different things with. So you could probably classify, those of you on the call, which area you sort of sit into of those three banners. But if you're in one, quite quickly have a look at what you're doing. And if you're in two, in that evolved state, you need to go faster and quicker because all of your competitors it's a digital arms race at the moment, to be honest with you.
So I think we've kind of touched on a few points already for question 2, actually, but how can MGAs start to engage better across all business lines?
I mean, for me, the first place they have to start is actually with the customers. When we launched Stella, before we'd even signed the contract for the insurance paper, we were doing research with the customers that we wanted to appeal to about what kind of product features they would find attractive. I think we really suffer with the insurance industry, and I understand why. Traditionally, products have been built by underwriters. They've not really been built by product designers, and they've been built to manage risk, not to delight customers. And, we don't live in that world anymore. People aren't just going to pass over to their insurance provider. I think years ago, there was a sort of acceptance that they knew better than we did as a customer. And if the insurance guy says this is what I need, then this is what I'll take. That's not happening anymore. The wealth of information that people have, and also, unfortunately, some rather public sets of circumstance where perhaps people haven't had the product that they thought that they had, and they've been hurt by that, means that customers are much more likely now to say that doesn't suit. It's not fixing my needs. And so we started from a perspective of, okay, well, what do the customers want? And can we build the product from there? And if you can understand what their needs are and then kind of combine that with the data that's coming through when you do start to live trade, you can start to have a conversation. This isn't a one-way environment where I say to you, this is what you should have, take it, and I'm disappearing off. What we should be having is this organic evolvement. And, Ben mentioned Amazon. They are the best example you could possibly have of an organization that is completely, constantly continuing and improving based on customer feedback. So does that work? Is that what people want? You know, and they try and they innovate, and, you know, the little buttons that they were sending out so that you pressed it and it just automatically would order your wash powder. Now, they probably got rid of that because it didn't quite work and it didn't really fit the mark, but they were doing it. And we need to do more of that as insurance businesses. And when you can see all of that data in one place, you know that XYZ's got 3 policies with you. You've got all this information about their lifestyle, that the technology now to be able to give you some intuitive feedback on what that really means. I looked at a device recently with somebody where you could actually, through technology, you could attach it to their Wi-Fi box, and it would determine all of the goods that people had in their house. So they would be able to go, okay, well, the Wi-Fi is connecting to this TV, which we know is worth X amount. You know, Wi-Fi, there's 4 computers that are online with it and X number of mobile phones. And then what they were doing is putting that information together to then say, the policy that you currently have, are you overinsured, underinsured? You know, could we reduce your cost of insurance and give you more coverage? That's what we should be doing. That's where we should be heading to, is being able to go back to customers and say, this is how I think we can help you. So, you know, the underwriting to product sale is then further combined with the fact that we often sell people products that work for us commercially without really that much of a thought about what actually works for the consumer themselves. Now, if you want a win-win, you want to be able to sell the best of the products that you've got, but the right products to the individual that you're dealing with. You know, that's what excites me, to be honest, about all the new technology and the conversations that me and Pete have at Stupid O'Clock, where we're talking about, okay, can the system do this? You know, it may be here right now.
No, who's the answer?
And that is usually his answer. Pete, I've just found this widget. Can we attach it to the Aventus platform, and will it work like this? But, you know, I think you do have to have that kind of dialogue.
Yeah, and I think it comes back, though, in the end as well. Like, I've been obsessed, like, when we talk about like, the product being the right sort of the right place, the right time for the right customer, I think that's something that can only be driven by having data. Like, you can't, you know, I've got a mild obsession with sort of embedded finance and embedded insurances, right? That kind of opportunity of selling. We call them insurance moments internally. You know, we've called them externally as well. But having that time at that point, like everything in our lives is insured in one way or another, really, right? So when is the propensity to buy is highest? And I think you can use data to really find out that, say, certain demographics like to look at, you know, insurance products in the morning, others like to do them at the weekend. Like, deliver the message at the right time for the right person to purchase your product. And you can only do that, you can't do that manually. You can't call every 25 to 30-year-old on your list at the same time on a Tuesday, but you can deliver them an SMS, or you can deliver them a, you know, kind of a push notification or an email, or just really resonate, or even with advertising. You know, the data that is used in advertising to drive messages at the right time to the right people, to get them for their propensity to buy being high at that point is so good. You could have all of that in insurance as long as you consolidate the data enough that you can use the information to drive the triggers, as we would call them. You know, buying a house, moving house is just the biggest point in time when you would buy stuff. You can identify behaviors online that would mean that, you know, it's time to strike with home insurance, car purchases, all the things, any line of business. When you set up a business, when Companies House registers you as a director, all the little triggers that you can use from data sets around the world to actually push a point of conversation going with a customer, whether they're prospective or old. I mean, you know, even you have so much data on your current customers that you should be able to find the right time for 2, 3, and 4 policies. You know, when you're trying to find new customers, that's an even bigger battle. But, you know, you've got this addressable audience in front of you, and yet very few people talk to them. They're too busy going to look for someone new rather than talk to the crowd that's immediately in front of them. And I think that's something that CRM, certainly that I've seen in business and across many industries, has such a profound effect on, if you consolidate all of your customers and products. I mean, you know, people still talk about customers as policyholders, right? So let's get rid of that for a start and start talking about them as customers, and you worry less about the policy and you worry more about the customer itself. I think that combined CRM and insurance data really has an opportunity to knock all growth plans that you may have, you know, out of the water, really.
Ben, got anything?
Yeah, I think Sam, succinctly summarised it. To be honest, it starts with the customer. Yeah. And it amazes me, and I joined Salesforce for a reason, because I saw this, the last sort of 15 years, which, you look at insurers or MGA systems, they're policy systems. Yeah. Most of the investment goes into policy systems. Well, that says it all, to be honest with you. Yeah. I think, there's a lot of, that you just said a whole load of stuff, advertising, targeted emails. I think it's really easy and I'm guilty of this sometimes with Salesforce. We talk about all the technology and everything around it and all this great stuff. I just bring it back to a bit of basics for people, which is, the basics of CRM is know me as a customer, guide me, and make it easy for me. Yeah, those three sort of basic principles of customer relationship management. And to Sam's point around, what she did as a business and starting to work around the customer needs. First thing you can do, just a really easy exercise, simple exercise, and we do this, I'm sure, Pete, you would be more than happy to as part of Aventus, map your customer journey. Yeah, map your existing customer journey. Look at, whether that's a broker, an intermediated, a direct customer. Sit down, you can do this at home, sit down and map out all the different touch points of your customer journey across those different channels and everything. And you'll be surprised at where the gaps are. Yeah. And then against that, just map out your 2B. Yeah. What would be that ideal customer journey in the future? Sam's talked about Amazon, Pete's talked about different, look at those as examples, and then you can sort of work out where you need to get to in terms of that sort of 2B future state, because that's where all of these organizations are going, by the way. And I talked about it earlier. You are in a customer experience war, yeah, with your competitors at the moment. And it is a digital CRM arms race, yeah. And every one of your other competitors are doing this, by the way. So, do have a look. And, as I say, it's just have a look at those customer journeys and start to think of it in a different way, rather than what typically happens, I see, work with insurers, work with MJs, work with brokers, is we look at products. We've got a great motor product here. We've got a great household product here. We've got an underwriter. We've got the actuaries and so forth. Look at it from a customer lens.
Great. Thanks, Ben. So what core functions of CRM will have the most significant impact on business, and where are the opportunities?
You want us to start?
Shall I go or you go? I'll go. I think it goes back to kind of the combination of everything that's being said here anyway, right? It's kind of like just having that centralized data enables you then, not because I think when you go and draw out your, like, where you want to get to, as Ben just mentioned, you can actually quite easily just deconstruct that once you actually start looking at where you need that data in a business. But you need I think you need your products, as in your insurance products, with your customers in databases. You can't have them as separate things, because that's where I think that the industry kind of struggles a little bit. And they see CRM as a nice to have, not as a necessity. You need a policy admin system. You can't run an insurance business without a policy admin system. I think you can't run a business without a CRM, in my opinion. I can't see how the two are ever distinguished. It's not like, so the feature functionalities of one really just push into the other. It's like, where can I see what my customers are doing? Well, if you're selling products, whether they're trainers or insurance policies, then you should really be seeing how they're engaging with those products and whether they're buying and whether they're getting to a certain level of quote, for instance, but then never really pushing through. But if you've got only that information in silos, you can never get a clear picture of anything. And I think what a CRM does, in my mind, is just boils all that down into very simple, interpretable data points, right? Because you should be able to see all your open opportunities, but that's not an open opportunities that a department over here looks at. It should be an open opportunity that the company as a whole looks at, and then goes to re-engineer your journeys or based on the data that you're collecting and collating as it goes. But CRMs and policy admin systems, to me, are one and the same, and they need to be together and viewed as one rather than as separate. My dog's going mental, by the way. I don't know if anyone knows.
He's agreeing with you,
Peter. Feed the dog, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, no, he loves CRM. That's what his name
Yeah,
is.
Well, he can't eat a CRM.
No, but my CRM just told me to go and feed him in a minute, so it's fine.
Yeah. The dog is giving you a notification that it's not happy.
Easy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of separate it into two bits. As a CEO, I don't want data, I want information. Like we actually have a lot of data in the business now that doesn't necessarily give me the right information. And if you've got a really high quality CRM, it will be flushing out the issues that you need to deal with, because it will be giving you that headline information around, you know, what isn't converting, what's your efficiency on the journey. To Ben's point of those kind of touch points for a consumer. One of the things I was really happy with when we launched in Australia, and, you know, we're a startup, we've had challenges, you know, we are a constantly evolving kind of beast, but one of the bits of feedback that we got back straight away was how easy it was for customers to buy policies from us. And, you know, how in sync we were with the price we were giving. We've got like a quick quote tool that Pete's put together for us, that 5 questions and they get an insurance quote. And that isn't, it's not far out of line with the price that they get at the end. And what they've experienced for a number of years in Australia is somebody enticing them in with a really cheap rate in the first instance. And then by the time it gets to the end scenario, they're getting, you know, a completely different experience. So making sure that those things are in sync are right. So I've got my needs as a business owner, that commercially I want to know what's working, what's not working, you know, where the opportunities lie. And then from the customer's perspective, what I want really, my utopia, is to know what that information tells me about what they'd like to be doing for the future. You know, is there an opportunity for me to engage in conversations outside of just insurance? Honestly, I don't want my customers only being spoken to once a year. And we do this in the insurance industry. It's an absolute kind of common practice, because for years we've operated on a dual pricing model. That means we entice them in with a cheap price in the first year, which we've then got to recover the money in the subsequent years. There's a genuine fear that if we speak to them during that taking up the policy and renewing the policy, we'll remind them about their insurance. They'll start looking around and we'll lose the policy. Now that's all going to go out the window, because, you know, regulation is not going to allow that to be the case. So how about we just flip that on its head and actually have them want to connect with us? And a CRM will do that, because to Pete's point, it'll hold that information so that you are aware that they've just moved house or something's changed in their life, and that you can potentially reach out to them and give them a piece of information that's useful. And it might not be at that point to sell them something. It's just to remind them that you've got their back, that you're thinking about them in their sort of general day-to-day life, and you're trying to offer extra value. You know, Ben was talking about it being an arms race. It really is, but it's also an information race and, you know, a connection race in terms of how good do I feel about the businesses that I'm working with, and why do I feel good about that? And that's, the more information, the more understanding that you've got of your customer base, the better I think you can do that. What do you think?
It's an interesting point. So, you know, that insight, when you mentioned it, it's amazes me, so I put my teeth back, it amazes me how many organizations, when they try, and as senior execs, when they try and get data from different parts of the organization, whether that's underwriting to risk to marketing, how hard work that is. Yep. Or they're in different data cubes, different data systems. You know, it's all over the place. Yeah. And it takes, you know, a number of weeks, days, months to get these reports. Well, how can you be able to, you know, really understand your customers, guide them, know me, all those basic CRM principles, if that data is across all those different systems, not readily accessible? Yeah. So I totally agree on that. I think the other thing, it sort of is a common theme on this, which is this mindset shift for the industry. It's a total mind shift in terms of this policy-centric to customer-centric. And I think, you know, CRM actually, I think, has a bad reputation. Yeah, you know, Salesforce has been around for 20 years. Everyone thinks of CRM as spreadsheets, you know, your card file. Probably a number of you have had Salesforce and, you know, you've used it with your account management, your opportunities. It is much broader than that. And we sort of talk about it now with customers as this sort of customer engagement platform, which is probably a better way of describing it, because, as Sam's talked about and Pete's talked about, it's not just that account management, the opportunity management. Yes, that's a huge part, but it also includes lead nurturing, marketing. It includes things like, as Sam talked about, easily configured pricing and quoting. We provide underwriting workbenches to a lot of the MGAs out there in the market today because they want to consolidate information, get underwriters closer to the front office, claims, FNOL. We do all of that as part of Salesforce, and we provide that to most of the major insurers and MGAs out there today. So I think the message from me, which absolutely coincides and plays on what Sam and Pete has talked about, is CRM is much wider than what you think about as an industry, and it's a mind shift from being this point solution, spreadsheets data in one place, to actually being able to rationalize that data and have access to that data at any point of your business. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. What are the core functions? Sorry, we've done that one. How can MGAs and brokers keep pace with fast developing tech that is future-proofed? Future-proof is one of those topics that's coming up a lot at the moment.
Yeah, I'll have a go. I think when you buy a system on day one, that by the time you get to day 365, if it's the same system, you're not future-proofed, right? I think that people are buying that when you buy a platform or an offering that never evolves without you asking for it to evolve, it's going to stand still. And I think that future-proofing for me is about ecosystem creation now. I think that connecting your CRMs to the different marketing clouds, the different components, your policy admin system within there, your front-end distribution, it has to be, I think it has to be an augmentation of a lot of different softwares rather than picking one that you think is going to be future-proof. I don't think that's possible. The other side of it, to me, touching back on the last question slightly, but answering this one as well, is that insurance products are going to evolve, right? This is the other thing that people don't look at as well. Like everything's going to become way more tailored, I think, to the individual, unless you've got that. But if you're on a system that is very rigid in its delivery, then you're also never going to be able to develop cool products to distribute, because you'll end up having the same issue as you currently have with 3 different systems. You've got your really cool products on one system, your other core products on other systems, where actually you need that ecosystem evolution where you can have all of those in one place, regardless of what product it is. And I think the tailoring of, using the data that you're going to get, I mean, embedded insurance is going to be massive in my opinion, but you need to be able to run that embedded product alongside your standard products. And if you've got a system that only does one, but then you need to go and find another one, then you're just going to create your own legacy downfall again and again and again. And I think it's about the flexibility of data, and the maneuverability of information is really the key there, right? You need to be able to push the data into different places at different times to either analyze it or actually just surface it in a way that's actually actionable. And I think that's the other thing with insurance. No one doubts in any way, shape or form that insurance doesn't have all the information and data that it needs, but it's just never used. And I think that the way that you have to future-proof your business is to make sure that all of your data is going to be accessible at any one point. And I don't think that's doable in one platform, if I'm honest. I think that is a combination of a multiple platform approach.
Yeah, Pete, I totally agree with you. It's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, the word ecosystem for everything, to be honest with you, in my book. But you're absolutely going to see these connected. We talked about journeys a fair amount, but these connected systems. Not everybody's going to do everything. Yeah, and there'll be different plugins for a bit like your iPhone with your app store, and you have different apps and so forth. That's the sort of analogy of I think the world and where we're going. I'd also say, and it sort of morphs into the build versus buy conversation, and I have this with a number of, execs. What is your core profit generating business? Your core profit generating business is selling insurance, to be honest with you. Yeah. It is not being a tech provider. Yeah. If you want to be a tech provider, absolutely be a tech provider. But the pace of change that tech is going through at the moment is just incredible. Yeah. We just paid, and this isn't, blowing on, we paid 27 billion for Slack, a couple of months back. Yeah. We paid 16 billion for Tableau. Yeah. So, leave that would be my view to companies such as Salesforce, who are actually building all this stuff out for you. Yeah. All of our systems, and Pete's talked about them, and Sam, is centered around the customer: sales, service, marketing, financial services, because you don't have to do that. So I think there's a fundamental conversation exec level for a lot of companies, which is do you want to be a tech company? If you do, great. Yeah, and have your developers, I've seen companies still got data centers and all that sort of stuff. That's fine, but obviously the opportunity cost of that takes away from actually your core profit generating business, which is selling insurance. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally agree with what you guys are saying. And I think the exciting thing for me here with this, that I've seen time and time again, I think there's a fear with smaller insurance businesses, smaller MGAs, brokers, that they're not going to be able to keep up with the big boys. And actually, this is the one area that you really can. Because, what I've seen is a lot of the legacy insurance systems are very hard to replace. The larger the company, the more invested in it, the more difficult it is to do an overhaul on that platform. And there's some of these that aren't great at connecting in with other products. So point about APIs, we're just switching out our claim system to a new system. And the reason being is that the old system that we had would not play nicely with new technology at all. That you can start with a relatively cheap platform and then modular build out the things that you need to be able to achieve the results that you want. And, there are the pace of the things that are coming through is so fast now that actually if you keep a very flexible mindset, you get yourself a basic system that's very solid and does what you need it to do, but is able to connect with all of these new things that come through, then you can compete with anybody. You can bring in the newest technology on the block quicker than the Avivas and the AXAs, and because they're going to have a much bigger job at trying to backfill all of those system requirements. So, I speak to a lot of the industry that are scared that technology is going to kind of, then they're not going to be able to keep pace with it, and they're not going to be able to bring this new stuff in. And for me, the truth of it is they're probably in a stronger position than some of the big boys.
Yeah, I agree, because you're not talking about, again, the big projects that you hear and read about, the transformation, the 5 years, 6 years. Smaller operators don't need that. It's months, not years, right? And I think that for me, it's about deploying that in a repeatable format as well, and understand that you can have all your products on there. But then, like you say, if it doesn't do a certain thing, like, we've built integrations with price comparison sites, right? Because, we've worked on that as well with yourself, Sam, and that's because that's still where distribution happens in certain lines of business. So it doesn't mean that we can't play nicely with them. It wasn't, you can sell it on your own website, but you can also sell it on an aggregator through the same API. The key is connectivity, I think, and it's just about, it's making sure that you've got the right, and I think when Ben said earlier is something that it'd be great if people did do it, and again, we'd help walk through it. Setting out your customer journey should determine your tech stack, really, in the way that you do it, because each department, when you look at plotting that out, one of the things about future proofing is you want to make sure that every department is covered in that journey. So whether you've got your finance team, what platform are they using? What system do they want to use? Is it connected to the next journey? Is it connected to the underwriter? And realistically, what you'll see is that there's a lot of platforms out there. And Salesforce obviously covers a huge array of things, but ultimately there might be a little niche solution that you want to push into for an API that actually might even be open source, might be free. But unless you plot it, I don't think anyone ever really understands how easy it is to do. The assumption is it's really hard, when actually it's a lot easier, because I think the industry is so used to slow delivery of technology, slow delivery of, over-promised, under-delivered, kind of big upfront fees. That's the other thing that changes with companies like Aventus and Salesforce now. It's not about big upfront costs. It's about ongoing journeys. And I think that it's not about how much can we squeeze now. It's about what journey can we go on as a business together for the next 5 years. And in that 5 years, our offering will change. Hopefully the insurance company's offering will evolve as well. And then you can evolve with your technology, and the technology evolves with you. And I think that component, putting it together and working out what each department needs to run a future-proof business, you'll very quickly see a theme that can be connected via APIs or data sharing in one way or another.
I think, Pete, just to quickly, I know time and so forth, that you touched a really important point there, which is, I think the industry, and Sam, you mentioned it as well, as being, our transformation, it sounds a scary word, all of this sounds scary, digital. It comes back to that mindset piece. And, the beauty of what, Aventus have got and Salesforce have got, most of this stuff is and again I use this, is configuration, yeah, rather than heavy lifting around creating big systems and, you know, getting developers and all of that stuff, because there's a notion, I think, within the industry, and that goes back years, around all these big policy claim systems and the typical time it takes to see the benefits of those systems come in. So I think, again, the message, and just to concur with Pete, is a lot of the systems, and Salesforce and Aventus have this, a lot of those, a lot of that functionality is already sort of pre-configured. So what you're actually doing is plugging your own sort of crown jewels into it, whether that's your pricing, you know, your product algorithms, whatever it might be, your marketing, your customer data. So it massively accelerates that sort of time to value of what typically I think the market has looked at in terms of digital transformation, policy admin systems, which, you know, some of these have been going on 5 to 10 years. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Just before we go to the last discussion question, it's very quiet on chat. So if you'd like to, put in a question, if you could do that now while we have the last discussion point. And the last one is, what are the pros and cons of building versus buying an effective CRM system?
I think fairly we've probably answered that in its main there, really, in the question before. But you know, for me, it's about sticking to your core principles of business, right? And again, if you're, you know, I think Ben mentioned it, if you're not a tech company, it's actually really hard work building technology. But it really is, and it takes a lot of time, money, and research. And you know, you could better spend that money on marketing or you know, or distribution opportunities, really. You know, rather than trying to reinvent. So, because in the end you'll end up with the same thing anyway, because that's kind of what everyone tends to do. They kind of then look at the different things that they might want to build, but actually, you know, so look to buy and then build it. Well, why are you building it? Because you're just going to build it the same. Or there'll be like a 1 degree of separate, like the smallest margin of difference that you think is going to change your world, and it's not. I think for me, you know, like obviously I'm selling, so buying is important, but I think for me it is about. But there is also that, you know, I built Home Life originally. That I built an MGA. Which is how this Aventus came about, and we had to build Aventus ultimately to build Home Life. Now, if I'd have had the money that I had spent on Aventus building for marketing, distribution of Home Life, then Home Life would have sold probably more policies in its early instance, because we'd have had more firepower. That for me is something that where Aventus now can provide that. If Aventus would have existed when we started that MGA, I'd have been all over it, to be honest, because it was a much quicker time to value, as the words were said, and also distribution opportunities that have been opened up subsequently from that, you know, have been much more powerful. And that's why I like the MGA market. I like the smaller end of the market, because I feel to Sam's point, I actually feel that the assumption of expense and cost is way mislaid. Like, it's just, you know, when they think how expensive this thing is going to be, I think they'd be shocked how cost effectively it can be done by buying and configuring.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, and then obviously Sam, you thoughts. I think a lot of that comes down to, from my experience, and again at the smaller end as well, is control. Yeah, it's about control, really. You know, there's loads of, you know, had more conversations about that build versus buy than hot dinners. Yeah, you know, control, maintenance, you know, all of the stuff that comes out, cost and so forth. But control is actually what it really comes down to in terms of, and when you look at systems like Salesforce, yeah. What people realize is, you know, you still are in control. Yeah. So you still input all your IP, you still have control over your data. We're basically just giving you a framework, yeah, to be able to get on and build technology and make sure you can service your customers. And that's why, you know, we've got 140,000, you know, customers globally who do this. So my big sort of, you know, point to the market is, whether you're small, large, medium, whatever size, broker, MGA, whoever it is, you know, you're still in control of the tech, yeah? We're not taking that away. You're still in control of things, yeah, which I think is a huge point.
I mean, from what I've seen, a lot of the motivation behind people building their own technology is this idea that they're giving away value by buying somebody else's. You know, if you look at the multiples for tech businesses versus non-tech businesses, I think there's a misconception, and certainly I had this, that if you hadn't built the technology yourself, you could never describe yourself as an insurtech or a fintech business. And it's just not true. You know, Boohoo, like a number of extremely successful businesses, will be operating off Amazon technology or Salesforce or Aventus. It doesn't mean that they can't describe themselves as an insurtech or a fintech. And I think, you know, that is a big driver for people when they think, well, I'll build it, I'll own it, and then that'll add value to my business. But I think, you know, one of the things that we don't take into consideration with that is that your IT team, I mean, with the best will in the world, and I love my IT team, and I'm hoping they're not watching, but, you know, they're not necessarily connected even to the rest of your own business, never mind the wider market. And when you buy a system in, it's got all of that feedback from all of the customers that it deals with. So if Salesforce is asked to make a change to the product to help support one of their larger customers, and they see that it works and it's a positive change, there's a good chance they'll roll it out across the rest of their platform. Whereas if I've got my IT team building something, one that they think I need, but maybe I don't need, and maybe we have no idea if the customers actually want, the one thing that's going to be missing is that wider market input into the overall technology. So, I personally am a much bigger fan of buying in the technology, because you can replace it. You can, it's to the point of modular. If something comes along that is a better piece of functionality that you can add into the system, you can do that without scrapping, thousands of pounds in development costs, etc. You're able to move on very quickly. Whereas if you're building it yourself, you are quite tied into whatever direction of travel you thought was the right direction of travel when you first started building the system.
I think time to value, again, is just that key, right? It's like you can learn so much more doing rather than getting to the start line. I think that's the other thing, these things. And I think we touched on it earlier about like the iterative approach to development of product. Like when you said about Amazon trying something and it not working, if you're building everything at core, to change that is another year away, right? So if it doesn't work, it's a long route back. And I think that, and don't get me wrong, obviously regulation and compliance and stuff doesn't allow as fluid a testing as companies would like in insurance. But also I think that it does, if you're concentrating on the customer and the journey and the distribution channels as well, I think is something that doesn't get enough attention. Like, where are you selling it? Then you're not going to build for every eventuality. And that's something that you have to be mindful of when you start that journey. And in building it's only the start. You've got to maintain it and then make iterations and change it, which is the hardest part. Like, if you build something and it works, then good luck. But like, if you build something that works and never needs changing, well, then you've solved the entire conundrum of technology at that point.
Yeah, and we haven't even mentioned security, Pete, as well.
No.
Yeah, which I'm going to.
It's another
I've got a couple of questions.
Yep.
So the first one is, do your statistics show that engagement tails off if the customer's age is, say, 65 plus? Is tech suitable for all?
My mum would be livid if she was...
And my dad, Pete.
Yeah. That iPad does more business than I do, I think. I think it's about people and places and environments. My mum, the engagement rates, I don't think, this is not about it being just digital journeys. This is about customer information and knowing your customer. Like my mum, my mum's a genius and brilliant. And when she was, but if you go back sort of 10 years ago, she wouldn't do online banking. Like, you're having a laugh. Like, she's going into branch, right? Because she's not doing it. Now she's got it on her phone and just, she's got Revolut now. Like it's just the change of mentality is not as slow as people think. But if they're not given the option, if my mum was never given an online bank account, she'd have to go to the branch. If my mum was never given anything, she would never know the power of saving up her euros throughout the year and watching an exchange rate. She was just, she worked in a school. She did reprographics. She didn't know anything about currency trading, but she's kind of, she's learned because she's been given the tools to be better. And I think insurance companies can do more to give their customers tools, but more importantly, give their own employees tools to service their customers better as well. So, I mean, statistically, I would say if you from I don't know of any hard fact, but I would imagine it doesn't tail off as much as you'd think.
I think that's an interesting point, actually, when we touched on, which is that sort of, let's not get it wrong here. We talked a lot about digital and so forth. Phone is still going to be a massive channel, Yep. And there will always be people, I know insurers who don't want to do actually FNOL electronically and so forth because they want the customer at point of claim. So I think that blended, seamless interaction and channel approach is going to be absolutely critical. I know my mum went to Insure and tried to do something online, self-service wasn't available, and then tried to phone somebody up and then, didn't have a record of it. That is sort of basic customer 101 stuff. Yeah. So I think, just to wrap it, I think that sort of, cross-channel seamless interaction will be applicable at all sort of demographics moving forwards. Yeah.
Sam, anything?
Any other questions, Helen? Or
Yeah, we've got one more.
I didn't want to miss.
CRMs are generally only as good as the data that feeds them. Culturally, we harvest financial information well, but not risk data that allows for the know me, guide me, show me. How does an MGA overcome this?
Pete, did you want to grab that?
I'll go first if you want. I think, again, it's about having, the fluidity of information. I think that information exists. It's just how you get it into a central place for me. Harvesting the customer information from, whether it's from their previous interactions with the business or whether it's their loss, their claims history that can be fed into the buy flows. I think it's about just that data fluidity for me. And I think that financial information is fine. And obviously in the buy journeys, I think that's where companies should be looking for their own secret sauce as well. They should be looking at what they can enrich their customers with third and first party data. I think that gives them a much broader application of that. Know your customer better will be actually driven by the information they can garner, whether it's the products, Sam mentioned about the Wi-Fi application, stuff like that will actually give you more data without having to ask. I think sometimes it's of interest for a business to go and get as much information as they can around, or have ways that algorithms can perform to actually, there's lots of data analysis platforms out there as well that will provide that kind of data analysis as long as you've got the information in one place. And I think you should be pulling in all the different angles for me, but Sam will know much better than I'm sure of how to triangulate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, the information is there. Yes, we've got risk information, but, even a standard quotation gives you an awful lot of information about your customer. The problem is a lot of the information that we hold is kept in separate houses. And to my point about us only speaking to them once a year, how on earth are you going to get to know somebody only speaking to them once a year? If you only speak to your parents once a year, you're going to be in deep trouble, I would wager. We can, if you're connecting with an individual, and I find it really interesting, people's attitudes towards cookies, and we go, this little thing flashes up and says, I want to read this article on new variants of COVID strains. And at the bottom it says, are you happy to share your data? And I want to read this article. So I'll say yes, because I want to get to the next stage. What you find is people are happy to share their information if they think there's something in it for them. If there's, if they think that information is going to help you give them what they need, they will give you more information. So I think having the right technology that enables you to be able to ask more questions of your customers, but not just to your own ends, to actually have a benefit for them, will naturally just allow you to know your customer more and guide them through that process more. I just think a lot of these issues, as we've articulated already, are down to mindset challenges as opposed to anything else. We are very fixed in a mentality that we are selling somebody a policy, that the only thing that we need to be interested in is the underwriting risk information and how that may change over time and how much money we're going to get out of it. And actually, if we just lift our heads up a bit and have a look on a more broader basis to that individual and their life and how insurance can potentially enable them to have better lives and protect the things that they love, and what therefore can I do to help achieve that, and what information can I garner between me and the customer to be able to get to that end goal, you're just going to be in a far better position moving forward.
Right, thanks, Sam. I think that's us come to the end of our questions anyway. Do any of you want to give some quick wrap-up thoughts?
I can hear my own voice in my head, so I don't think anyone else needs to hear that. Just to say thank you for everyone. Just to say thanks on our behalf really for everyone attending. And any feedback. And I think we're going to distribute some materials after as well to the registrants, so people can ask any questions. And if we can help in any way, please feel free.
That's great, but you've just done my job for me. To add to that, we'll be sending out a follow-up survey with some questions around the CRM and the topics debated today. So if you could take 5 minutes to just give us your views, that would be greatly appreciated. And from me, a big thank you to all the panelists, Sam, Ben and Peter. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having us. Cheers, guys. Take care.
Thank you.